degrees that you just heard about, and up to that point, I didn't know what a bra was. I mean, you probably don't know it either. It's an anti-gravity device. Think about that. It's used against gravity. So are the chairs, or the pillows, or the mattresses that we all get accustomed to down here. Anyway, one of my favorite stories. I hope nobody's insulted by that. Anyway, so in this particular mission, our objective was to go to the Mir space station, and you'll see this picture of the Mir station. This is at about 100 miles with the sun coming up behind it. It's beautiful. Here's a close-up view of this station as we began to do our approach. We then did a fly around, went completely around it, taking pictures of it. You can see the solar panels. It looks kind of small on the screen, but it really isn't. It's about a football field in size. So a little bit larger, wouldn't fit in here, a little bit larger than this auditorium that we're in right now. And then here's a closer-up view of one of the crew members. Happens to be the physician on board that station. And just as I was taking the picture, he was looking out, and this picture, this photo, actually ended up on Aviation Week, on the cover of Aviation Week. But he is noted for spending the most time in space, 422 days. And that's the longest time that any human being has spent in space. So I want to show you a few slides of looking out the window that I think is really pretty. So this is a slide of the Earth, of course, and you can see there is Africa, you can see Europe, you can see England there. But this is daytime and nighttime at the same time. You can only do that in space. I thought, since we're in India, I'd show you some pictures of space from India. So this is the whole country of India at night. Now, a lot of folks ask me this other question is what can you see in space, man-made? And of course, at night you can see all the lights from the cities. During the day, if you were to take the same picture, where the cities are would just be sort of gray and flat. You would not be able to delineate any roads or anything like that. Here's another view, and this is Mumbai, so you can see what I'm talking about there. And then one more picture, which I like. And again, you see the Himalayas. This is kind of looking southward here. And the thing I want to point out on this slide, you see that sort of orange glow across the Earth. So at night, we really see this glow. And this glow comes from the energy from the sun hitting the atmosphere and exciting particles in the atmosphere. So at night, the Earth actually has this glow, like a halo. It really is very pretty. So let me go back to my job as a crew medical officer, because now I'd like to lead into why this astronaut, physician turned venture capitalist. So it probably started with my duty on board the space station and space shuttle as a medical officer. So here I am examining one of our crew members, actually drawing blood. Here is a physical examination. This is the first physical examination that was ever done in orbit. And even though we had been in space for traveling space at that point for over 40 years, no physician had actually gone into space and actually measured different things. Listen to the heart and listen to the lungs and find out what a normal physical examination is. Those of you who are physicians or in healthcare know the first thing that you do in your education is learn how to examine a patient. And so this is what I was doing up here. And one of the things I found is that if you're going to examine a patient in space, remember the first slide I showed you? The first thing you have to do is to tie the patient down so they won't move. And then you have to wear a harness or some way in which you then tie yourself to the patient. Because you remember in school about equal and opposite reaction? So if I just try to examine a patient in space without tying them down, as soon as I touch the patient, the patient, both and I would go in opposite directions. So it's one of the lessons that I learned about restraints. Also did the first telemedicine conference from space. And we did this with the Mayo Clinic, which beamed down my physical examination and down observations that I did on orbit, and then eventually to other academic medical centers around the United States. So you probably heard that NASA's done a lot of things, a lot of spin-offs. I did an interview with one of your local papers a couple of days ago down in Carolina. They asked me a question about, and it was in regards to the recent launch that you guys have done to Mars, is why should we spend money on doing this venture to Mars when we have all of these issues here in this country? And I told them we had the same question that came up, and that question I get all the time at NASA. We've been answering that question over the years. One of the answers to that question is this: the fact that ensuring human beings in space require us to gain knowledge of how to do that. And then if we then have all these requirements to keep people in space, the only way to do that is to develop technologies. So a couple of things. We learn from that experience up there. We find out what happens to the human body. We take that knowledge to create new ideas and new innovation and new technologies that have found their way into the lives of us here on Earth. Now I know it's an eye chart, but what's on this eye chart are things like NASA doing the first programmable pacemaker, which is used throughout the world. Doing the first, developing the first robotic arm, developing microminiaturization of electronics, the first portable X-ray machine, imaging, all came from the space program, that effort to ensure that we could survive in these harsh environments. And so that got my interest in looking at technologies that could be applied to how healthcare is delivered. Here's that first robot that was developed. And I'll show you what that's led to. One of the things it's led to is a robot that we currently are using on board the International Space Station called Astronaut. I don't know if you knew that, but we actually have this sort of android that helps astronauts when they go outside the vehicle to do spacewalks. So I mentioned earlier that we travel about 17,500 miles an hour. But I failed to mention that at that speed we go around the world every 90 minutes. We get to see a sunset or sunrise every 45 minutes. It's pretty neat to experience that. And I want to show you what a sunrise looks like from an orbit. So first of all, just orient you. The Earth is down below the dark portion here. And then you see that layer of clouds, and that layer of clouds is about 50,000 feet. And then you see different layers of the atmosphere in this slide. Now, when we're on orbit, our eyes see so much more than a camera does. And these layers will actually be distinct layers, almost like someone drew a line on every part of the atmosphere going up. So as we go around every 90 minutes and 45 minutes, the sun rises. And so this is the sun peeking up over the horizon. And within about 5 to 6 seconds, the time it took me to say, in about 5 or 6 seconds, that sun will be right in your face, and the temperature will go from a minus 165 degrees to a plus 200 degrees. And so our suits, when we do our spacewalks and our spaceships, all have to be able to take those extremes of temperature. So let me talk about Vesalius Ventures. I now run a venture capital firm called Vesalius Ventures, and we've been around since 2002. And again, it was my interest in taking technology and applying it to healthcare delivery that got my interest in going into venture capital. I'll talk about some of our portfolio companies. This is just a sample of some of the companies that we have invested in and been involved with. What do we look for? We look for this convergence of medical devices, healthcare IT, and telecommunications. And right in the middle is our sweet spot there. And so there are a number of technologies that we are involved in. But let me talk about the transition first, before I talk about some of the companies that we've invested in. Healthcare in the United States, and I'm sure also being affected here in India, is going through this transition. And on the left side of this slide is kind of the current model, which includes fee-for-service, includes disparate payment systems, and a system that focuses on illness, and it's fragmented. I've talked to a number of you in the last couple of days here, and some of you have companies in this area trying to address this fragmentation. And what does that mean? When I go to a doctor, I have an episode, the doctor treats me for that episode, I then, if I get well, I never come back and see the doctor, the patient and chart goes off in different directions, and then the next time I come back to the doctor, I have to fill out the same paperwork that I did before, they gotta go find the chart, there's no continuous record, at least in a way that would make healthcare more valuable. So the new model is going to be fixed payment. It's going to be bundled payment. There will be one payment system given to take care of patients from cradle to grave. And so this is going to drive the healthcare systems that actually pay for healthcare to figure out better ways to provide efficient care. And so they're going to do a lot of population-based type of care. There's going to be incentives, and it's going to be integrated. And so the only way you can make that happen is through innovative technologies, and that's what we are investing in. So let me talk about some of the technologies as I close here. So these devices range from devices that can be in the home, like these telemedicine for doing disease management. One of our first investments was the device that's in the middle called Health Hero, and we invested in that company. And what this device does, it kind of sits in the home, wakes up in the morning, and it asks a series of questions to the patient. How are you feeling today? The patient has congestive heart failure. It may prompt the patient to get on a weight scale. The easiest way to see if someone is decompensated from cardiovascular disease, congestive heart failure, is to look at their weight. If their weight goes up, then you know that something's happening and you have to change their drug regimen. So this also helps to manage diabetes, helps to manage high blood pressure, and it communicates using Bluetooth to devices, peripheral devices. Smartphones are playing an important role in healthcare these days. So smartphones and iPads, mobile health is what it's called. And one of our investments is EOS Health, which is a phone that has a dongle that you connect to the phone where you can actually measure your blood sugar. And so you can take it anywhere. It not only measures the blood sugar, but it stores it in the phone through a special app, and then sends it to a call center and then on to your doctor. If you are a parent with a child with juvenile diabetes, it would also send that signal to your cell phone so you can keep track of your kid and their treatment. Patient monitoring is going to be big, and I've got like 3 examples here. Remember the slide I showed you at the very beginning with Star Trek where the doctor was standing on the person in the bed? That was a smart bed technology. So one of our investments is called Sensiotech, and it uses a pad. It's about 2 feet or so by 1 foot that fits underneath the mattress of any hospital bed. Actually, you can use it at home too. And it uses the technology called ultra-wideband radar. So it's like radar, but at very low frequency. It sends the signal into the body and is able to count beats. So respiratory rate, heart rate, can look for arrhythmia. And I just got a note from the CEO today. We actually are combining a blood pressure, wireless blood pressure device that's going to be part of this. So you can do basically this virtual medical assistant. And all of this information can be displayed at the bedside and then sent to the nursing station. The other 2 companies that I've got here is eCardio, which is a cardiovascular monitoring company. In fact, we're the 3rd largest monitoring company in the United States. And the inners of that company, the intelligence comes from another one of our investments called Monemo, which has an algorithm for looking at the heart signals and being able to predict whether a person has heart disease or will have heart disease. Medical consulting is big, and one of the big companies is called Specialists on Call, where you provide specialty services to remote areas and also can serve in rural areas and actually back up doctors. So it could be a backup. One of our most recent investments is a company called JSA Health, which does telepsychiatry. So think about that. Being able to do psychiatric consultations using 2-way communications, and the company is growing by leaps and bounds. And then I will show you how robotics from the NASA program has entered into day-to-day workspace in healthcare. So this is a device that is done by Touch Health. It's not one of our investments, but we have followed the development of this technology and the growth of the company through the years. And so you can actually do a virtual, not house call, but virtual rounds. So if I am an internist, which I am, and I see my patients in the morning at my office, I can actually stay in my office and go to the hospital virtually and drive around this robot. And the robot's hand, of course, is my hand. The robot has speakers and has a microphone for hearing, and you're able to actually have an encounter with your patient without being in virtual presence. And then this device, by Intuitive Surgical, the Da Vinci machine, has been around for years. And these days, most tertiary hospitals, the top hospitals, have one of these devices. So you can see how all of these technologies are changing the way in which healthcare, and we're right in the middle of that. We're excited about being in the middle of that. So I'm going to end here. I have about 1 minute and 6 seconds, so I'm trying to do this real quickly if I can. And I'm showing this slide because Ashok mentioned that we have a foundation, the Harris Foundation, which focuses in K-12 education programs all across the country. We do have had some programs that have reached into even the continent of Africa, and we're looking for other opportunities. But one of the things I always push with the young people that we engage through our programs on a daily basis is this notion of dreaming, of how important dreams are. I noticed, couldn't help but notice, coming in, that that's one of the things that is the tenet for the Thai Hyderabad, is trying to encourage you to take those dreams and turn those dreams into reality. The reality, of course, for entrepreneurs is the creation of innovation technologies that lead to companies. And so let me encourage you to do that. Dreams, it starts with a dream. And it starts with this question that I'm going to end by answering. And that is, what does it take to be an entrepreneur? I know everybody has their own answers, but I'm going to give you mine. By the way, this slide is of the northern lights. I don't know if you've ever experienced that, but it's aurora borealis. And this is, again, where the energy from the sun hits concentrated areas, normally in the northern and southern part of our planet, and it energizes those molecules in the air. And you actually, from the ground, it looks like curtains in the air. And so on my second mission, we were high inclination orbit, and I got a chance to fly right through this. Talking about exciting, getting your attention. It really does. It's beautiful. And actually took this picture. So what does it take to be an entrepreneur? As I said before, dreams. It's important because dreams allow us to look for new ways in which to do old things or create new ways in which to do business. What does being an entrepreneur? It means to think differently. We think differently. We see opportunities where others don't. And so let me encourage you to nurture that type of creativity because it usually leads to innovation, new products, new ways of doing things, and ultimately companies. Achieve, and in this, to take risks. And what I mean by that is to achieve, to accomplish anything, and of course it takes achievement to be successful, you have to be willing to take risk. It just goes hand in hand. And if you're not willing to take risks, then you probably should be an entrepreneur. And if you're not willing to fail, guess what? You don't need to be an entrepreneur because we all have failed time and time again. And we have to learn from those failures. And so I want to show you this last slide. I'll go back to this one. So this one, if I could just go back, this is us hanging out on the end of the robotic arm, lifted up about 35 feet above the payload bay, where I had a nice opportunity to look at my fellow crew members down below in the spaceship. And then this is the view that they had of us just kind of hanging out in space. Again, I like the nice curvature of the Earth. And then, of course, that leads to this slide, which I think is one of the most fascinating ones. And fortunately, or unfortunately, this is not me. This happens to be Bruce McCallum, who was the first astronaut to take our jetpack away from the spaceship and took the first pictures of the space shuttle. And of course, we took the first pictures of him just kind of hanging out in space, and I love that. So I'm going to end with that. I hope you got an opportunity to learn about a little more about my background, why I decided to be an astronaut, how I then put all that together to become a venture capitalist. I have to tell you that I'm having a very exciting life these days, being an entrepreneur. And I'll end with the theme. And if I can do it, I always say, then you can too. Thank you very much.